While money can buy you almost everything in the world, it doesn't bring you freedom. Just ask some of the world's richest people who are currently rotting in prison for some of the most heinous crimes. From famous drug lords to people who committed frauds worth billions of dollars, let's look at the billionaire criminals currently behind bars. Kicking off our video with Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the drug lord's incredible fall from grace. As the head of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world, El Chapo orchestrated the shipment of hundreds of tons of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, and marijuana into the United States. His cartel is believed to have controlled up to 25% of the drug flow from Mexico to the US at its peak. El Chapo's ability to evade capture made him a legend in the drug world. In 2001, he famously escaped from a high-security Mexican prison by hiding in a laundry cart. When he was recaptured in 2014, he managed to pull off an even more spectacular escape, this time through a mile-long tunnel that opened right into his prison cell. However, by 2016, the Mexican government had had enough. Under heavy pressure from the US, they extradited him to face justice on American soil. In 2019, after a sensational trial in Brooklyn that exposed the inner workings of the cartel, El Chapo was found guilty on all counts, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and engaging in a criminal enterprise. The court ordered him to forfeit $12.60 billion, the amount he allegedly made through his drug operations. Today, he is serving a life sentence at ADX Florence, a supermax prison known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Up next, we have Alan Stanford serving a 110-year sentence. A name that once symbolized success and prestige in the world of finance, Alan Stanford was living a life in the early 2000s that most people could only fantasize about. He owned private jets, luxury yachts, and even cricket teams. He transformed his Stanford International Bank in Antigua into a billion-dollar enterprise, attracting clients from all over the globe with promises of high returns. The island was practically his playground, where he hosted grand events and rubbed shoulders with politicians and celebrities. But behind this facade of wealth and sophistication lay a $7 billion Ponzi scheme. For over 2 decades, Stanford convinced investors to buy fraudulent certificates of deposit, assuring them that their money was safe and growing in the Caribbean. In reality, Stanford was using new investors' money to pay off earlier investors, a classic Ponzi operation. When the scheme finally collapsed in 2009, thousands of people lost their life savings. In 2012, a US court sentenced him to 110 years in prison, making it one of the harshest sentences ever given to a financier. During the trial, Stanford remained defiant, denying any wrongdoing and blaming the collapse on a global conspiracy. His refusal to take responsibility likely played a role in the judge's decision to impose such a severe sentence. Today, at 74, Stanford spends his days in a high-security prison, far removed from the luxury he once enjoyed. He has been ordered to pay nearly $6 billion in restitution, but many of his victims still haven't seen a penny. It's a tragic tale of deceit and a stark reminder of how quickly a golden empire can crumble. Up next, let's unravel the dark secrets behind Prakash Hinduja's luxury life in Switzerland and the workers trapped beneath it. Prakash Hinduja, one of the patriarchs of the wealthy Hinduja family, enjoyed decades of luxury and power before his legal troubles caught up with him. Prakash and his family built an industrial empire with interests ranging from information technology to real estate, earning them a net worth of about $20 billion. However, in 2023, Prakash's reputation came crashing down in a scandal involving the exploitation of workers at his lavish Swiss villa. Prakash, along with his wife, son, and daughter-in-law, was accused of mistreating domestic workers who had been brought over from India. These workers were promised better lives, but what awaited them was a grim reality. Their passports were confiscated and they were confined to the villa, working up to 18 hours a day for meager wages deposited in Indian banks. Wages they couldn't even access while in Switzerland. The workers described a climate of fear, and reports revealed that some of them slept on basement floors, lacking basic human comforts. In court, the family faced serious charges of human trafficking. Although these charges were ultimately dismissed, they were convicted of exploiting the workers. The judge handed Prakash and his relatives sentences ranging from 4 to 4.5 years each. The family's defense team argued that Prakash's failing health should warrant leniency, but the court was unmoved. Authorities even seized some of their assets, including precious jewels, as a precaution for potential penalties. It's a dramatic fall from grace for a billionaire who once enjoyed the good life in Switzerland. Next on the list is Truong Malan, the $44 billion fraud scandal. Truong Malan began her career selling cosmetics at a market store with her mother. However, after Vietnam's economic reforms in the late 1980s, Lan seized new opportunities. She gained a vast fortune in real estate, capitalizing on Vietnam's rapid economic growth by acquiring land and developing luxury hotels, restaurants, and commercial properties. Her rise to power, however, was fueled by deep-rooted corruption. Lan's connections with influential government officials gave her access to prime state-owned land, which she acquired for a fraction of its real value. In 2011, she took things to the next level by planning the merger of 3 struggling banks into the Saigon Commercial Bank, SCB. Although Vietnamese law prohibits individuals from holding more than 5% of a bank's shares, Lan used a network of proxies and shell companies to secretly control over 90% of SCB's operations. With SCB under her control, Lan exploited it mercilessly. Her fraudulent loans made up nearly all the bank's lending, with funds siphoned off to offshore accounts. The scale of her deception was so vast that the Vietnamese government launched an unprecedented investigation. The trial involved 2,700 witnesses, 10 state prosecutors, and 2,100 lawyers. Authorities revealed that even high-ranking officials were complicit in her scheme, with a former chief bank inspector receiving a life sentence for accepting a $5 million bribe from Lan. But Truong Malan's influence couldn't protect her this time. In a rare show of transparency, the Vietnamese government laid bare the full extent of her crimes, fueling widespread public anger. The Communist Party saw the case as an opportunity to make an example of her, sentencing Lan to death in 2023. She became one of the few women in Vietnam, and perhaps the world, to receive a death sentence for white-collar crime. Although the court ordered her to repay $27 billion, many doubt whether this sum will ever be recovered. Some speculate that the death sentence is the government's way of pressuring her to return more of the missing billions. Lan has denied the charges and is expected to appeal. However, her fall from grace is one of the most spectacular in modern history. Her story isn't just about personal greed. It's about the dangers of unchecked power in a rapidly changing economy. Lan's case has become a key chapter in Vietnam's blazing furnace anti-corruption campaign, which has already seen 2 presidents, multiple ministers, and hundreds of officials disciplined or imprisoned. Her fate now lies in the hands of the courts, but the damage she caused will haunt Vietnam's banking sector for years to come. But finally, we have a woman who built her entire empire on deception. Elizabeth Holmes wasn't just a tech entrepreneur. She was the face of a new era of healthcare. With her deep voice, black turtleneck, and comparisons to Steve Jobs, Holmes cultivated an image that fascinated Silicon Valley and Wall Street alike. Investors like Rupert Murdoch and Larry Ellison poured millions into Theranos, believing it could change the future of medicine. But behind the glossy PR, the reality was much darker. The blood testing technology Holmes claimed to have developed never worked as promised. Patients received inaccurate test results, with some even receiving terrifying false diagnoses for diseases like cancer and HIV. For years, Holmes dodged scrutiny by carefully controlling information, even silencing whistleblowers within her company. Former employees described an environment of fear, where any questioning of the technology was met with immediate backlash. The scandal finally broke when investigative journalist John Carreyrou exposed the fraud in the Wall Street Journal. By the time the truth came out, Theranos had burned through nearly $1 billion of investor money. The downfall was swift and brutal. Holmes was charged with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. And in 2022, she was sentenced to over 11 years in federal prison. The court ordered her to pay $452 million in restitution, but many defrauded investors, including Rupert Murdoch, never saw a cent. As of today, Holmes has served only a few months of her sentence, with a long road ahead. Her transformation from the youngest self-made female billionaire to a convicted felon remains one of the most dramatic falls from grace in business history. And that wraps up the look at billionaires whose fortunes couldn't save them from prison. What do you think of these billionaire criminals? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.